Hey everyone, Egman here with another video. So this is not a Dragon Ball Super one. I'm sorry it's not, but this is a really important one for this channel and people who are a fan of watching my videos. Long story short, if you don't want to watch the entire video, because you probably know what COPPA is if you clicked on this, but it's a really real possibility that if nothing changes from YouTube side, the FTC side, that I'm not going to post videos on here anymore. They've made it really risky for you to do so. You can get fined for it, and it's not worth the risk to me. Even though I've spent like almost 2 years making a crowd here. I don't. It just feels like I'm being thrown under the bus. So. I don't really want to fearmonger this or like over exaggerate, but it just seems like a bad change, and I don't want to be on the platform if that's the case. So I rarely do this, but here quickly, I do have a Patreon, a Twitch, a Twitter, and also TCG Player. If you actually thought this was a Dragon Ball Super video, links are going to be in the description for this. If you want to follow me over to anything else that I do, I'm still looking at my options. Right now, I'm thinking I'll maybe just post videos on Patreon and hope that people supporting me on there is good. Luckily, I don't. This is just hobby money. I don't need any money at all. If I just make videos on Patreon and people like them, cool. That's good for me. I don't have any dependencies for it, but yeah, that's a thing. And yeah, and I might look at some other options as well. But yeah, if you want to follow me, I'll make and also I'll still make videos on here until I believe January 1st is when it's the make or break point for all this stuff. So I'll still be making videos then, but if January 1st comes around, I'll probably make all my videos private. Make one video saying, "Hey, if you want to follow me, come to these links," and that's really it. It's really a shot in the foot for a lot of this stuff. So if you're still here, you probably don't know anything was going on and all that. So we're going to talk about COPPA real quick. If you want a really good explanation, I have a link in the video or description below that is kind of more detail of what the law is and all that. Really long story short, in I think the late 90s, COPPA was a rule or became a law, which pretty much with the intent of protecting children's privacy on the internet, right? Makes sense, good intentions, all that. In 2015, it was updated to protect children, and children are normally, I think, ruled as kids from 13 and under. But it's to protect them from targeted ads. So, and if you don't know what a targeted ad is, it's that if you go to a website, your browser, remembers that you're at this website, and then when you go to a different website and that has ads, it can say, "Oh, have a history of these places. Cool, we'll send them, an ad for this." And so, they don't want that for kids, which makes sense, right? If they watch a YouTube video about toys, and then they get advertisements directly for them on toys, that can be, that's a gray area of how moral that is, right? So that's the idea. YouTube didn't change anything for this law. They just decided that it didn't affect them, and then they got sued last year for a lot of money. They settled outside of court, or they settled the settlement. That's not how you say that, but they settled. And I believe we don't know what the settlement was, but part of the settlement inherently is to prevent them getting sued again, right? And so they pretty much got this system now to say, all right, if your video, you have to mark every video that you have as directed to kids or not directed to kids, and that's it is as vague as it sounds, and so that isn't like a big problem in itself, I guess. One, like having to separate them into two things, that's okay. But the really big thing to me, and I think a lot of other creators, is that because it's so vague, it really is dependent on the opinion of who's viewing it, right? If this is for kids or not, and the penalties, for marking as kids content and also incorrectly marking it are pretty high. So if you mark your kids, if you mark your content as for kids, that means you lose monetization. You get less monetization. I think people are estimating between 50 to 90% less monetization, which isn't the biggest thing for me, once again. But the big things are you can't have comments, you can't have your videos in playlists, And it's just there's a couple other stipulations, but no comments and not being able to put in playlists are huge things. I also don't think you can have end screen. Yeah, that's right. You can't put like links on the end screen like I do for your other videos, nothing like that. It really is just like a video with no interaction with it. That's what this is. And then which just goes against the whole thing of why I make YouTube videos, right? If you know my content and you watch it, the biggest thing for me is posting a video and then seeing what people think about it, right? I'm always in my comment section. I'd say almost half the comments in any video is me replying to people. I'd say a third to 50% of the comments are me just replying to people and having conversations, which are really fun. And this is a card game, and you miss things a lot of times, or when you're building decks, people have ideas that you haven't thought of, and so losing that ability to me sucks. That's like the biggest thing for me. And it's just, and you also can't have community posts and super chat. There's a couple other stipulations, but essentially it makes your channel less interactive. And I assume the idea is that with interaction that can mean kids can get the privacy gets compromised, whatever. That's the idea for there. And then you could also market for adults, and but this has a potential to get overridden by YouTube with their algorithm. They're having an algorithm, force videos to be for kids, which sounds bad, especially since it's like a double-edged sword, right? If your video isn't for kids, inherently, like if it just has a lot of cursing or like violence and all that stuff, and an algorithm thought, oh, it looks fine, it's fine. It can update to that, and then it will just kind of like I don't really know how they're finding people, but there's a system in place to find people, and I believe previously YouTube was the one responsible, but since they got this big lawsuit that happened against them, they're shifting all the blames to the creators for doing this. And it's not like $100 fine or something small like that. It can be up to a $42,000 fine for mismarking your video as for kids or not for kids, which is, once again, it is super duper vague what this means. And if you can think of like Dragon Ball Super, right? It's an anime, right? And it's cartoony, it's colorized, it's Dragon Ball Z was in Shonen Jump kind of thing. Like it's just the idea of like kids could be into Dragon Ball, right? It's not like, and it doesn't even have to be your content was made for kids. It can be even as vague as, oh, one of your primary demographics is kids from 0 to 13. So it just seems like a really like catch-22. Like there's no middle ground, right? Which really sucks too, because YouTube had this big push to say, hey, if you want to be advertiser friendly, you have to make your content family friendly, be able to be watched by anyone at all, and not lesser cursing, no violence, all that kind of stuff. They made this big push for like a year, and now they're punishing people who've made this decision, have this implemented, and now they're like, okay, you have to market for kids and lose most of your monetization and all your interaction with your community, or you can market for adults, but we might switch it back. And it's just like a super gray area. And my content, I think, can be marked for kids because I'm family friendly, or it's a general audience, right? There's no middle ground for people who are just making good stuff. And like it's really like I can't say anything but like it's stupid that it's not more clear, or they're just like, oh, it's easily just plops into one of these buckets and it'll all be fine. And it's not subjective based on who's watching it either, right? It's something that you could decide is, not for kids, someone with maybe less information or knowledge about it. Like, if I was trying really hard to make Pokemon content. Sword and Shield's been out. I almost have 100 hours in the game right now. I've got a competitive team on the ready to make content for, but I'm afraid to make that content because it's a Pokemon game, right? Even though competitive battles are more geared for at least the general audience, if not a hardcore, at least teenager adult audience, right? Since it's Pokemon, and honestly, anyone who is working for the government or YouTube who sees this video about Pokemon, they're just going to say, "Oh, that's for kids. Cool, market as kids. No interaction. Don't make any money off this video," and all that other stuff. It just seems like a bad move, right? And so it's just been really, really tough for this. And obviously, I'm probably the least like I shouldn't be complaining about it that much because this is a hobby, right? I just want to make content for people and have a good time. But there are like a lot of other people who, have a living off YouTube. They make Let's Plays, they make, content like that. And they just pretty much told, hey, you can't make your content anymore. And, the reason why you're doing so well, you can't make money off it anymore. And, no, we can't change anything about it. And that just seems like this is going to like destroy jobs and, bankrupt people in a lot of ways. Either they can't do their job anymore, or they try to skirt the line of not being for kids content, and then someone can just say, oh, your content's for kids, you marked it wrong, here's a strike, here's a fine for 42K, hope you can which is honestly pretty close to what's people are making every 6 to 12 months, right, making this content, if that. So it's a huge fine, it's a huge risk, and I know a lot of other people will be leaving this platform if it's not changed. So it's a really unfortunate thing. I really hope that the FTC changes their guidelines for what kid friendly is. And I think like, okay, so we're gonna move over here. We have they have like this little page about it, and about this is gonna be in the description too, on what it means to be kid friendly. It has some requirements. Here's like the rules set out the additional factors the FTC will consider in determining whether your content is child directly. Subject matter, visual content, the use of animated characters or child oriented activities are incentives. So guess what? Dragon Ball uses animated characters, so that's a potential, right? They do have a thing that the determination of whether content is child directed will be clear in some contexts than others, but we can share some general rules of thumb. Like, okay, cool, a rule of thumb was fine if it's like a slap on the wrist or something, but if it's a rule of thumb for $42,000, that's crazy. The kind of music are other audio content, the age of models, like some of these are fine, like age of models, right? If your content is like kids playing or something, or if it's like a children's program specifically for children, yes, makes sense. Presence of child celebrities or celebrities who appeal to children, like, okay, that's vague, right? Who who doesn't like Iron Man? Who doesn't like Spider-Man, right? If you have a video with Spider-Man, appeal for kids, cool. Language or other characteristics in the site, whether advertising that promotes or appears on the sites is directed to children, and so this is where they got in trouble, right? Because they got targeted ads, which means that they weren't being safe about that, and competent and reliable empirical evidence about the age of the audience, which is also kind of silly because YouTube, you're supposed to be 13 or up to be on the main platform, and so we don't even have stats on our side to say what ages are. Not that maybe I could be wrong. I haven't looked at it correctly, maybe, but I don't think there's a way to say like 13 under. What's my percentage there? So there's no real way for me to know what if I'm actually have that audience there. So so the rule allow for civil penalties up to 42K per violation, but FTC considers a number of factors in determining the appropriate amount, including a company's financial condition and the impact a penalty could have on its ability to stay in business. Well, Google and YouTube paid $170 million in other COPPA cases. In another COPPA case held this year, the operator paid a total civility of $35K. So this could just be a number that people are scared of, sure, but there's been no clarity on this, and this just, I don't know, it's up to, right? It doesn't mean like, oh, everything's going to be 42K. It could just be 1,000, but like there's so much uncertainty about it that it's just a scary number. Let's see. And so most of the reason I brought this up too is that the FTC is currently evaluating the rule in light of rapid changes in technology. If you'd like to comment on the effectiveness on the COPPA rule and whether the changes are needed, the FTC has extended the comment deadline to December 9th. So, and then some more information here. So if you guys want to help this, please add a comment here just to make sure that we, get heard in that kind of sense. But like you can see some of these comments, like a lot of these are just YouTubers who are just scared to keep doing this. And it's really like, honestly, if you really think about it, I don't have any, like, I have control of that, ads are going to be played, but I don't have any control of what ads are going to be played, right? And I don't honestly have too much control on who's my audience, right? Anyone can click on the YouTube link, and it's not age, or you don't have to make an account for YouTube. Like the openness is there because it's that's the idea, but there's no way for me to say, hey, this is 13 plus content, please don't watch it if you're under 13. And there's no marketing. Like, and the silliest thing to me is that YouTube Kids exists, right? This is an app that works. It's available. This is, you know, ideally what, you know, any content that is for kids you can do here. And the funniest thing is, like, I was looking at this, and so to even get into YouTube Kids, you have to click way more buttons. So you have to say, like, I'm a parent, and like, you have to set up, you know, controls there, and like, ooh, 1994, boom, you got my birth year. I don't want to get content created. So yeah, this, I don't know, it's maddening. So thank you for listening to my rant. It went a little bit more ranty than I usually do, but I really appreciate you getting it this far. If you want to follow me on other stuff, please check out my Twitch, my Twitter, and my Patreon in the description below. I really don't want this to be like me, you know, fear mongering or getting attention on my other accounts on other places, and you know, say, oh, I'm gonna leave YouTube, better follow me on these other things, and then, you know, stay on YouTube and just do it to get, you know, free followers. So I hope it doesn't come off like that. And also, I forgot to mention that I've been contracted with PPG to make content for their Patreon. So if you want to see some extra Eggman content, that can be found there on their Patreon. That's going to be in the description below as well. And yeah, so let me know what you guys think about these rules. Please leave a comment if you care about me and honestly any other content creators. And I'll catch you all next time.